everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going on a deep dive into something really interesting that you sent our way.
Oh, yeah.
How scientists can make a bigger difference when it comes to policy decisions.
Okay.
You sent us some pretty fascinating stuff about something called normatives.
Uh,
I'm really excited to sort of unpack this with you and explore it.
yeah, it's a vital question,
Oh,
you know, because so often you have this like amazing science that's being done,
right.
but it doesn't really translate into like action,
Right.
real world action.
Yeah.
And, it's not enough for scientists to just like, present their data.
Right.
We need to be giving policymakers like clear guidance that they can actually, put into practice.
That makes total sense. But from what you sent over, it seems like there's like a disconnect. Like policy decisions a lot of the time just focus on economics, which
Mhm.
doesn't always get you the full picture. Like when we're talking about a healthy environment or social equity, you know?
That's exactly the gap that normatives can help bridge. They're essentially statements of how things should be,
Hmm.
based on scientific evidence, but also like rooted in the values that we share as a society.
Okay, so it's not just about like cold, hard data.
Right.
It's about bringing values into the equation.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. One of your sources used a great example. If we as a society value biodiversity, then we should aim to protect something like 33% of our forests. You see, it's not just an observation, it's a target. It's a goal based on both scientific understanding and what we as a society think is important.
So it's like a way to translate scientific findings into actual policy recommendations.
Yes, it's about making science matter, making it actionable. Instead of just saying, hey, climate change is happening, a normative statement might say something like, if we want to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, then we need to cut carbon emissions by X amount by the year Y. So it gives policymakers a specific goal to shoot for a target
Right.
that reflects both scientific evidence and societal values.
This is starting to click for me. But like, how do you actually go about crafting a normative statement? Is there like a formula or steps or something?
There is a process. It all starts with identifying the core values that are in play. What does society really, truly care about? Is it clean air, a stable climate, biodiversity, health,
Mm-hmm.
or something else entirely?
Yeah.
Once you figure out what those values are, then you can start connecting them to what we call real capital.
Real capital, is that like gold bars and stocks and stuff?
Not quite. Real capital is a broader idea. It includes all the assets, natural, social, human, even built infrastructure, that are needed to achieve a desired outcome, even if they don't have a readily quantifiable market value.
Oh, okay.
Think of things like clean water, a stable climate, strong communities, a skilled workforce.
Gotcha. So it's about recognizing the value of things that traditional economics might miss.
Exactly. And once you've identified those core values and the right types of real capital, you can frame your recommendations as these really clear if-then statements. Like, if we want clean air, then we need to reduce emissions by X%.
So it's not about like dictating solutions. It's
Okay.
about providing this clear framework for action based on both evidence and those values.
You got it. And to make those recommendations actionable, you need to make them measurable.
Yeah.
Specific, quantifiable targets like reducing emissions by 50% by 2050. Those are way more helpful to policymakers than just like these vague calls to action.
Right, that makes sense. It's like giving them a map with clear directions instead of just pointing them in a general direction. One of the sources you sent had this really interesting example about carbon emissions from the Swedish transportation system.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that one?
Absolutely. This example really shows how a well-crafted normative statement can provide clear direction. The statement was, if we want to reduce fossil fuel CO2 emissions from the Swedish transport system by 2050, then all vehicles must run on renewable energy.
Whoa, okay, that's a bold goal.
It is. And it really highlights the power of normatives. It's not just saying that emissions are bad, it's setting a specific target based on a clearly articulated value.
Yeah.
A carbon-neutral transportation system.
And what is the current status of renewable energy in Swedish transportation?
Well, right now, only about 12% of vehicles are running on renewable energy. So there's a pretty big gap to close. But by framing this goal as a normative statement, policymakers and stakeholders have a shared target to work toward.
That's so interesting. It's like we're moving beyond just identifying problems and actually creating solutions.
That's the essence of it. And to show you how normatives can be applied even more, let's look at another example from your sources. This time it's about overharvesting in Swedish forests.
Ooh, that sounds like a classic clash between short-term economic gains and long-term sustainability.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm all ears.
The context here is that these intensive forestry practices are leading to forest degradation and biodiversity loss. The normative statement that came out of that was, if Sweden values long-term forest health and biodiversity, then 33% of production forests should be preserved.
Wow. It's so clear and concise, and it directly links the desired outcomes like forest health and biodiversity to a specific action like preservation. But how did this normative statement actually influence policy in Sweden? What happened?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. That's what we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive. So you want to know what happened after those Swedish scientists came up with that statement about forest preservation?
Exactly. It's one thing to write a good statement, but how do you actually get policymakers to listen and actually do something? Did this normative statement about protecting 33% of production forests lead to real changes?
It's a great question. And the answer is a little complicated.
Hmm.
So the statement itself didn't magically solve the problem of overharvesting immediately,
Right.
but it did help to change the conversation and set the stage for policy changes.
So how'd that happen?
Well, first, the statement helped to make the issue more clear and easy to understand for a wider audience.
Yeah.
By framing the problem in terms of values,
Mm.
like long-term forest health and biodiversity. The statement connected with people who might not have been experts in forestry management.
Yeah, it's it provided a common language,
Yeah.
a way for scientists, policymakers, and the public to talk about the issue in a way that everybody could get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by explicitly linking those values to a concrete target, preserving 33% of production forests, the statement gave policymakers a clear goal.
Yeah, it's it took the debate out of these abstract principles and made it more about practical action.
Precisely. And even though the 33% target wasn't immediately made into official policy,
Right.
it did become a benchmark.
Right.
A reference point that influenced future discussions and negotiations.
So it wasn't an instant fix, but it helped to move things in the right direction.
Yes, and that's often how these normatives work.
Right.
They kind of plant a seed,
Right.
but change the way people think about things.
Yeah.
And they provide a starting point for action.
That's actually really encouraging. It shows that scientists can have an impact on policy, even if it's not always a straight line from research to action.
Absolutely. And, this example also highlights something we were talking about earlier, the limitations of traditional economics.
Right.
Those intensive forestry practices that were hurting the forests were often justified based on short-term economic gains.
Right. Making the most money in the short term.
Yeah.
Even if it means using up resources and harming the environment in the long run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where normatives can be so useful.
Yeah.
They help us to look at the bigger picture,
Right.
to consider all of the values and effects,
Right.
not just the ones that can be measured in dollars and cents.
One of the sources you sent talked about this idea of real capital and how it includes all of those vital resources that might not have a clear price tag.
That's a key concept.
Yeah.
Real capital includes things like natural capital. So forests, clean air, fertile soil, social capital. So things like strong communities, trust, and social networks. Human capital, which is knowledge, skills, health,
Right.
and even built capital. Things like infrastructure, technology buildings.
So when we're thinking about policy decisions, we need to factor in all of these types of capital, not just financial capital.
Precisely. And that's where normatives can be so helpful. They can help us to reframe these policy conversations to include these broader values.
In the case of those Swedish forests, it sounds like the normative statement helped to bring the value of natural capital, like the long-term health and all the different life in those forests, into the policy discussion.
Exactly. And while it's important to think about money, it shouldn't be the only thing driving our choices.
Right.
Normatives help to make sure that other values, like environmental sustainability and the well-being of people, are considered too.
This makes me think about something else one of the sources mentioned, the difference between being prescriptive and being conditional when you're creating normative statements.
That's a really important point. Sometimes people worry that scientists who use normatives are being too bossy,
Yeah. Oh, like telling policymakers exactly what to do.
Exactly, like they're overstepping their boundaries and trying to control policy instead of just giving information.
Right.
But well-crafted normatives aren't about giving orders. It's about explaining the logic.
Right.
Like saying, if we want this, then we should do that.
So it's about providing guidance that's based on evidence.
Exactly. And that's why it's super important to be clear about those societal values. We need to say, look, if society decides that a healthy environment is a top priority,
Yeah.
then our research suggests that protecting forests and reducing emissions are the best ways to achieve that.
It gives policymakers the space to make their own decisions, but it also gives them a clear path to follow.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that normatives aren't just for scientists. Anyone who wants to influence policy or make a difference can use them.
That's a good point. It's about using evidence and values to help everyone understand what needs to be done.
Exactly. And this leads us to another really important aspect of normatives, their ability to make people more accountable.
Ooh, tell me more about that. Accountability seems really important for making sure things actually get done.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And when we use normatives, it becomes much clearer who's responsible for what. If we've said, if we want clean air, then we need to cut emissions in half by 2050. Well, then it's pretty obvious who needs to be taking action to make that happen.
Yeah, it's like a roadmap with clear checkpoints and people assigned to each step. No more passing the buck.
Exactly. And that clarity can be really motivating.
Right.
When people know what's expected of them and why,
Right.
they're more likely to step up and do their part.
And I bet that increased accountability also helps build trust between scientists and policymakers. If scientists are delivering on their promises and making their work relevant and useful, it makes them more credible.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about building a relationship based on respect and understanding.
Yeah.
Policymakers need to trust that scientists are giving them good advice. And scientists need to know that their work is being taken seriously.
It's like a two-way street with both sides working together towards the same goal.
Exactly. And, as we're talking about working together, I'm reminded of one last benefit of normatives that I think is really powerful. Their ability to foster a sense of shared purpose.
Oh, I love that. Shared purpose. Like
Yep.
we're all on the same team, working toward a better future.
Exactly. When we talk about our scientific findings in terms of normatives, we're not just presenting data.
Yeah.
We're inviting people to join us on a shared mission.
Right.
It can help us overcome those political and ideological differences that often get in the way of progress.
It's like we're rising above those disagreements and focusing on what truly connects us. The desire for a healthy planet, a thriving society, and a better future for everyone.
Well said.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember that the path from scientific discovery to policy change is rarely a straight line.
Right.
There will be setbacks, there will be challenges,
Yeah.
and there will be times when it feels like we're not making any progress.
That's true. But even in those moments when we're feeling frustrated, it's important to keep the big picture in mind. We're not just trying to win a debate or score points. We're trying to create a world where science is valued, where evidence shapes decisions, and where our actions are guided by a commitment to a better future.
Beautifully said. I think that's the perfect way to transition to the final part of our deep dive.
This has been so insightful. So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into normatives, I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too. It's really cool to think about how scientists can use normatives to shape a better future,
Yeah, it feels like we've discovered this powerful tool that can help connect what we learn from research with what actually happens in the real world.
And it's not about scientists telling policymakers what to do. It's more about creating a shared understanding of the problems we face and working together to find solutions.
Speaking of shared understanding, that example with the overharvesting in those Swedish forests really stuck with me. It showed how even a simple normative statement could really change the conversation.
Yeah, that one's a great example of how powerful normatives can be. That statement, if Sweden values long-term forest health and biodiversity, then 33% of production forests should be preserved. It really cut through all the noise and gave everyone a clear focus.
And what's really neat is that it wasn't just about protecting trees. It was about recognizing all the other benefits those forests provide, like the clean air, the carbon storage, the habitat for wildlife.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond just those economic arguments that often dominate policy decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And realizing all the other values that are important.
As I've been thinking about that question you asked earlier, about what area of my research could be turned into a normative statement.
Oh, yeah. Any aha moments?
Well, I'm really into neuroscience,
Mm.
especially how our brains learn and adapt.
Uh-huh.
And I've been thinking about how we could use those insights to make education better.
That's awesome. Education is like the foundation of a thriving society.
Exactly. And we've learned so much about how kids learn best. What if we use that knowledge to create normative statements that could guide education policy?
I like that. What kind of example are you thinking of?
Well, for example, we know that what happens early in childhood has a huge effect on how brains develop. and on well-being later in life.
Right.
So a normative statement could be something like, if we value lifelong learning and well-being, then we should make sure all children have access to high-quality early childhood education.
That's a great example. It's clear, it's concise, and it connects right back to those core values of fairness and opportunity.
It's about changing the conversation from, is early childhood education important, to how can we make sure every child has the best possible start?
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about normatives. They help us move from just talking about things to actually doing something about them.
And it's not just about influencing policy. I think normatives can also help guide the choices we make in our own lives.
Absolutely. Our personal values should guide our everyday actions.
For example, I'm really passionate about reducing my environmental impact. So maybe my personal normative statement could be, if I care about a healthy planet, then I should try to consume less, choose sustainable products, and support policies that protect the environment.
That's a perfect example. It's about aligning your actions with what you believe in, both in your personal life and your work.
And it's about realizing that even small things we do can add up to make a big difference.
Exactly. If enough of us start living by these normatives, if enough of us start acting on our values, we could really change the world.
This has been such an empowering conversation. I feel like we've been given this amazing tool to make a real difference.
I agree. Normatives give us the power to use what we know to create a better future. They give us a voice in the decisions that affect us and the world around us.
So to all our listeners out there, let's use the power of normatives. Let's think about how we can use them in our work, our advocacy, and our daily lives.
Let's make our knowledge count. Let's use our voices to build a world that reflects our values.
And let's keep exploring those fascinating connections between science, society, and the future we're all building together.
Until next time, keep those brains thinking and those hearts passionate.